The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being with me today. How's the volume, folks? Can you all hear me? I see we've got Terry with us. Oh, David's onto it faster than anyone. Your sound and video is good. Thank you. I'm glad to have that from you. Okay, so who else have we got? Oh, yeah, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, you can hear me. That's good. Now, why would I be paranoid about the volume and asking you at each webinar, can you hear me? It's because of the internet issue, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about today. But in the meantime, let me welcome you all. And it's good morning to our friends in the land down under. And good afternoon to our friends across the ditch in New Zealand, who are busy celebrating having won the America's Cup, having defended the America's Cup, which is the oldest sporting contest that we have. It's a very big deal for yachties and people who are even tangentially interested in sailing. More about that as we move along. Yeah, you call them yachts. That's a good point, isn't it? They look like praying mantis or a cicada of some sort. They really have morphed. Joel from Vero Beach, hello, mate. Good to have you with us as well, as usual. Wonderful. Okay, so let's see who else we've got. We've got a good turn up today. Albert's with us. Albert Z. Let's see, I can say that properly for Americans. Z. My daughter calls it Z. She, when she was a baby, we got some very interesting videos from the States. I had a mate who was a pilot, and he used to bring these educational videos home for her. So she picked up an American accent at a very young age and still has it. Ben's with us. Great. Carol, welcome. As I say, we don't have many ladies with us, so always happy to welcome them. Wonderful to have you with us, Carol. Carlos, great to have you here today. Let's see who else we've got. Lots of people. Big turn up today. David, thank you. Yes. Dean S., the farmer from Canada, who's been pretty much our gun trader for a while now. This is a chap who doubled his account in August, and normally we refer to it as a percentage on. Great to have you, Carlos, and welcome. We refer to it as a percentage on margin, but Dean's gone the whole hog, and he's just doubled his account, which is really doubled that return on margin. Great effort. Then he got 80%, I recall, in September, and he came back not so long ago and said, I don't want to tell you what I've got in January and December and January and February because it will sound boastful. We like that. Well done, Dean. Dean's a great example of a man who perseveres and sticks with it. In fact, he did a Danielcode tutorial about 10 years ago in, I think he's told me, I think it's probably Colorado Springs, but nevertheless, it was great having him there and meeting him. And then he came back about 2 years ago, hadn't heard from him for a while, and said, I want to do a new tutorial. I want to learn how to trade time, which we've only been teaching for about 2.5, 3 years. And he did his tutorial on time and just has never looked back. Fantastic results, Dean. Hope you're still raking it in, mate. I mean, if you're prepared to live in a country that's as cold as where you are, you deserve everything you get, mate. All the good wishes. You're a brave man. Deborah's with us. Deborah, thank you for being with us. Deborah, another lady. Wonderful to have a few ladies here. Funny thing, ladies dominate Forex trading in Japan. It's very much a feminist sport over there, but not so much anywhere else in the world. Jean's with us. Wonderful to have you. George as well. Greg, the wealth manager from Colorado Springs. And I'm glad you could be with us, Greg, because I know you've been traveling, and you've got a whole lot of more travels lined up. But we'll catch up with you next week. My friend Sean's with us, which is great. Val as well. Mick D, he's very interesting character, Mick. He's a friend of mine. I've known his family for, I'm going to say 26, 28 years. It's a long time, isn't it, Mick? But Mick's a wonderful guy. He's an Australian, lives not far away from me here. It's a pity we don't see more of each other, Mick. We're not really that far away. And he came to me and did a tutorial, and he's really embraced the study of time cycles. And some of the work he's doing on his own is quite extraordinary. Great to have you with us, mate. Alan from Fort Lauderdale, wonderful to have you. Oh, Alan, hey, yes, I remember you. Great, we talked not so long ago. Wonderful to have you with us. Michael M., that's Michael the dentist from Chicago. I got an email from Michael just the last couple of days. He did a tutorial with me in the States some years ago now, and became pretty famous by posting his comment on the tutorial. A few months later, he said, "I've made seven times the tutorial fee in the last 6 weeks or so." Don't quote me on the exact time, but that's as I recall it. I'll try and find that for you, Michael. I know what you want. I'll let you know. George, as I said, is with us. Nikki, great to have you with us, Nikki. Mark L., he's one of our gun traders who's done so well with his tutorial, but he's too busy to start trading because he keeps being offered, he's obviously a very efficient operator, he keeps being offered terribly important jobs. He's been trying to retire, but he's in too much demand. So that's what happens there. And Jim, am I still conducting the tutorials? Yes, mate. We've been doing them by video for the last 2 years. They're very, very popular. And I have to say that the teaching by video is actually, I think, better than the live videos, although, you know, the fun we have at the live videos is just wonderful. And hopefully this rotten COVID thing will eventually go away, and we'll get on top of it, and we'll be able to travel. But yes, we're doing tutorials all the time. Whenever you like, drop me a line, and I'll send you some documents on it. John in Arizona. John, I hope this clarifies some of your questions today. Good to have you with us. Jeff, he's the antique man. One runs quality and prestigious antiques. He's a Danielcode tutorial guy. So's Neil from Chinchilla, I think. Did I get that right, Neil? Yes, he's a cotton farmer, tutorial guy, terrific guy to have with us. Stephen, boy, we've got a big turn up today. I probably missed some of you. Greg, of course, I was saying he's a wealth manager in Colorado Springs. He's been doing a tutorial, very prone to having holidays just at the current time. Hello, Neil, good to have you with us, my friend. We should get together and have a beer. Anyway, Greg has been trying to, he's just done a tutorial. He's trying to make an appointment to talk about it more, and I've been having these internet issues, which has been a real drag. I'm going to tell you about it. Stephen's with us. You're wonderful to have you with us. Martin, welcome to you. Many Martins. Mike the Murph, my old mate, a good Irishman. I hope you enjoyed St. Pat's Day, my friend. Good to have you with us. I didn't post the video this year. I should have, or you might be able to find it under forum and renew it. People need to see that. Jim's with us. Deborah's with us. Carlos, I've already welcomed. Raj, good to have you here, Raj. Alan, yes. Sue up in Cairns. Hello, Sue. Welcome. Sue is my star lady trader. She came to me to do a tutorial. She said, I've been trading. Don't quote me literally on this stuff, folks. As years run by, but basically said I've been trading for 12 years and I've never had a winning month. And she did the Danielcode tutorial, and I don't know if it's fair to say she's never had a losing month, but she's doing very, very well. It's quite terrific. Jim C., the wonderful Jim, who's been very sick with COVID, had some other problems, I think. Jim, wonderful to have you back here. Jim, and his name is James. His son is James as well. We get confused between the two. Great to have you with us, Jack. Norbert up in that coal country, up in Canada. Good to have you there. And look at this. Under par, Jeff has... Jeff, I heard you'd come back to us. You've been away for a while. It's wonderful to have you with us. Jeff's a really seriously good golfer who did some tutorials with me, and actually was at the tutorial in Taupo, New Zealand, when gold made its high, and we had cell signals all over it, as you remember. Anyway, let's move on and see what we've got, because there's so much to talk about. Right, let's get going on it. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so you know that markets are rational, orderly, and sometimes predictable. And the Danielcode is a set of proprietary ratios that control time and price in all markets. The interesting thing about that is these ratios that we use are all actually time ratios, but we'll go into that more as we go along. And I want to share with you my travails dealing with government. And Ronald Reagan said that the most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help." And boy, that's it's so true. In fact, it's so true that I put it in twice. Well, I started at 5 o'clock this morning and worked late last night to get this done, so you'll forgive me. Yeah, that's it. I wonder how we can show that. Mick, let me see if I can post that to everyone. As you know, I have no technical skills. Okay, I managed to get it up, thanks to Mick very much. That's the most beautiful Irish music. Any of you with Irish blood in you, like Mick and me, would, and a lot of others of you too, do watch it if you haven't seen it before. I should post it for every, St. Pat's Day, but it escaped me this year with all my stupid issues with the government. So always remember that all left-wing governments see themselves as change agents. Social engineering is a core belief for those of the leftist persuasion. They are raised on the belief that as an elite they have an obligation to help the great unwashed. So they do all these wonderful things that they think will help the great unwashed, and most of those things, of course, are helping themselves. This absolute carnage at the southern border of the United States, since Joe Biden's pretty well involved everyone to take a swim across the Rio Grande and come stay in America. This is put forward as a wonderful humanist and humanitarian measure, and there certainly are parts of that that are true. But the reality is this was a policy started under Obama, who was a seriously smart guy, and who figured out that the probabilities of Southern or South American migrants, legal or not, coming to America was a pretty good thing for them, because the percentages are that they favor Democrats hugely. So bringing in 10 or 11 million dreamers, as Obama did, all those folks will eventually get citizenship sooner rather than later, the way it's going at the moment, and the vast majority of them will become Democrat voters. And Biden's just following that along with the same logic, of course. His hero in life is Obama, and he's following much of that. So always remember that I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Boy, what a thing. Okay, so let me tell you about this. I live at a most beautiful place called the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. And it's a tourist town. It's Australia's version of Miami without the drama, all tuned down quite considerably. But the Gold Coast originally was called Surfers Paradise. One of its suburbs still is. And it's just miles and miles of white sand, beautiful white sand beach with beautiful, terrific waves. It's famous for being a surfer's paradise. And I live about 3 or 4 miles away from the tourist traps along the beachfront. Some of them are very nice, I must say. I live on a bit of a hill where you can see the Pacific Ocean, and I can tell you today it's beautiful. It's a beautiful blue. It's a beautiful day here. It's early autumn for us, just the perfect time of the year. It's pretty much all the perfect time of the year. We have about 10 days a year where it's a little bit too hot, but air conditioning is a wonderful invention. The rest of the time it's short sleeves, and occasionally maybe 2 weeks. That's a fortnight, Greg, as you know. 2 weeks in winter you'll wear a light jumper, but that's about it. Back in 2007, we had a Labour government. At that stage, all of our internet was run by a number of private and semi-private corporations, and was very efficient and very good. Then we got a Labour government in Australia, federal government. That's the equivalent of your Democrats in the States. And Labour government of all persuasions are very dangerous creatures. You're starting to see some of the washout of it all there. Ignore but 10 days where it's warm. Yeah, boy, it's cold there. You're starting to see that in the States. Europe, of course, is a socialist mess. And Britain is hanging on by the skin of its teeth with Boris, but the Labour Party of Great Britain, it's actually the Labour Party of England. They're pretty devolved over there, but boy, they are a real worry. They're serious left-wing nuts. But nonetheless, we got a Labour government in power in Canberra here, our capital. They decided they were actually having an argument with Telstra at the time, which was the biggest private supplier of internet. It had been a government entity, and of course taxpayers paid over the years billions of dollars to get Telstra extended all over the country. Then, of course, the government had the good idea of privatising it. So having paid for all of its infrastructure and worked with the public funds, government has no money of its own. It takes money from the taxpayers. So having taken money to pay to build this thing up, they then sold it. They privatised it and floated it on the stock exchange. So they had at least 2 bites of the apple. Anyway, for whatever reason, they were providing a very, very efficient service. The Labour Party fell out with them and decided that it would be a good thing for Australia to embark on building the National Broadband Network called the NBN. They got this through in legislation, and they then had to legislate to stop anyone competing with them. You can see that in this four corners comments that I put up there for you from ABC News in April 2011. So we've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars duplicating the existing internet, and more billions extending it and supposedly updating it. And they also legislated that when the NBN gets to your area, you have to join it. You can't stick with your provider. I mean, this is supposed to be a country of free choice. Cop this. You can't stick with the internet provider you want. None of them can, because they're all going to be put out of business, because we're not going to have any competition with the NBN. So sometime late last year, unfortunately, the NBN rolled out to where I live, and I had to join them. Didn't have the option. So that was all right. There's a fairly small dot on my dial of anxieties and aggression. We changed over and had a new modem put in and all that technical rigmarole, which I don't understand. But it worked fine for a while. And then about a month and a half ago, it started dropping out. And it had the peculiar character that it dropped out every time it rained. Now, we don't usually get a lot of rain in this part of the world, but this is the wettest year I can remember in Queensland, and we've been living here for 9 years now, and I lived here before in an earlier life for probably another 10 years, and it's been wet this year. It's never stopped raining. So anyway, we duly complained about it. and you can't complain directly to them. They have a number of private entities that distribute this thing, and you have to deal with them. And they're, of course, all mates of the government. They're the ones who got the nod to be distributors of the NBN. And a very efficient tech guy came out in a ute. What we call a ute is a utility vehicle. Pretty much a pretty special Aussie idea. It has space at the back to put your tools and ladders and this, that, and the other. Anyway, this chap came out, very nice guy, Steve. And he said, "Have you got a lot of birds around here?" I said, "Yeah, we have a flock of cockatoos, just the most beautiful birds you've ever seen. Big birds, a beautiful green gold crest on them, absolutely pure white, beautiful. And we've got a mob of about 100 of them. Now, farmers will be rolling at the grave of me saying that, because they're an absolute pest out in the country. When I was on the land, as we say here, on a property out of Wagga, I mean, these things just, their capacity to destroy your crops is amazing. But anyway, now that I'm not a farmer, they're very beautiful birds. But it turned out they're also very inquisitive, and they like nothing better than picking at the PVC covering on the broadband cables, which are all above ground here. And they'd torn back a fair bit of the covering on my cable, so the wires were exposed. And every time it rained, of course, you got a short circuit of some sort, and the power dropped, the internet dropped out. So that was pretty straightforward. So he said, "I'll put in a report on this, and NBN will be down, and they'll have a cherry picker with them and a couple of service trucks. They've got to run a fairly lengthy piece of cable to replace it." So that was okay. So he made another appointment, and a week later, another chap came down again, one man in a ute with a ladder on top. And he climbed up to the broadband cables and came to see me. Said, some birds have torn a lot of the PVC covering off the cable. It's exposed to the weather, which is why when it rains, your internet drops out. I said, "I know that. The last guy who was here told me exactly that." Well, he said he lodged a report saying you've got to replace the cable, and I've done the same thing, so that'll get done. So, of course, we had our third appointment. And to that third appointment, instead of a liftable bucket and a big crew, we got another guy with a ute and a ladder, who said, "Look, I know what the problem is." He said, "The last two guys have told us. I'll put in another report." So I went back to Aussie Broadband, who are my retail provider. They've been very good about it. They do what they can. We had another appointment. And for each one of these appointments, this is a huge, massive entity, government entity, it's a statutory body. Money, no object, billions and billions. But every time you get an appointment, they send you out a text message. And you have to answer one, if there'll be someone here at the time of the appointment and you're ready to see them. Two, if you want to change the appointment. Three, if you've got COVID. And four, if there's some other reason you're not going to be here. So you press the number one and send it, and it won't send. So then you have to ring your retailer and say, "I'm trying to send this number one back," because if they don't get a reply, they won't turn up. So this is happening the first three times. On and on and on, just total and utter waste of time and money. So then we get our fourth appointment last week, and waiting for the cable crew to arrive with their bucket lift and everything else. And what do we get? We get another man in a ute with a ladder. And he doesn't even, he doesn't bother coming to the house. He rings me and says, I know what the problem is, because three of our techs have already identified the problem. We've all put in reports. I'm required to go there because that's my job, and I have to give them some evidence that I've been here. So I've been up the ladder and I've photographed it and sent it to them. I mean, honestly, can you believe it? I mean, for sheer incompetence, government, bureaucracy. Eventually, I got hold of somebody at Aussie Broadband, and you no good talking to those guys. They can't do anything. Eventually, I got escalated to a level 2 guy. So I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Oh, I supervise the guys on the phones." I said, "Well, I want someone a bit more senior to you." He said, "Well, I'm very senior." I said, "Well, find me someone more senior." Eventually, I got a level 1 guy, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Oh, I supervise this part of the network." I gathered it was a pretty big deal. And I said, "Honestly, I'm wasting your time, my time. This has just been going on, and it's no good putting in another report because the same thing will happen. You actually have to speak to someone at NBN and knock their heads together." Well, he said, "We can't. All we can do is go onto the website they've given us and file a complaint." Anyway, cut a long story short, eventually I found someone who could pick up a phone and talk to someone at NBN, and they have now threatened to come this afternoon. To me, it's about an even money bet whether we're going to get a proper cable crew with their bucket lift, or we're going to get another one man in a ute and allow. I mean, you can't believe it. Anyway, that's what happened. Trying to run tutorials, keep up to date with clients. Eventually, I got so sick of it, I sent one of the tech guys around here off to head office and said, "Go and buy me the most expensive Wi-Fi program and the most efficient one you can find." So we now have our own Wi-Fi arrangement set up, and they assure me, global warming, Alan, quite right, yeah. They assure me that if this internet to NBN cuts out, my new very sophisticated and very expensive Wi-Fi arrangements will cut in automatically. And the sales lady assured me that would happen. Well, I've already had a sample of it, and I can tell you it doesn't happen. But anyway, I hope that things will be better after this afternoon. Okay, so having told you about that, let's move on and talk about how things change. As early as 600 BC, Phoenicians were using celestial navigation to find their way across the seas. Polynesians used them, of course, to sail all over the Pacific Ocean from Hawaii. This is a picture of a Phoenician craft of its era. It had a great big square sail on it, apparently. But move on, because that leads me to the America's Cup. And I don't know how many of you are yachties. I'm a yachting tragic. I've done an awful lot of sailing, mainly offshore sailing in long distance races, and I love it. The America's Cup is the oldest trophy in the world. It was started back in 1851 by the Royal Yacht Squadron at Cowes in England, and it was won by the American Challenger, and the name of the boat was America, the schooner America. When the Brits first saw America, they said, "Well, if that thing's right, everything we do is wrong," because it had a pointy end at the front. And in that era, most of the other boats in the world, competitive yachts, had a blunt nose at the front. So it was pretty special, and this cup was awarded, and it became a semi-permanent contest between nations, actually between yacht clubs, strictly speaking, but effectively nations. And this is the cup. It's a magnificent trophy made by Gerard's, the jewellers in London, and it's got higher and higher over the years as plinths have been added to put on the names of the people who won it. And this thing on the right, believe it or not, is the new AC-75, America's Cup 75-foot class. This is the New Zealand boat. Honestly, does it look like a boat? Well, not very well, and I can tell you it's an extraordinary thing. It sails on a foil. You can see one foil's up in the air. That's the windward side. That's providing the ballast against the pressure in the sails from the wind. On the leeward side, the side you can't see, that T-shaped blade is in the water. At the back, they've got a very small, thin rudder. But these boats sail. They get out of the water. They need about 15, 16 knots, a bit less they can do it, take some time, but 12 knots they can get up out of the water. In fact, they get out of the water at 7 or 8 knots, but it's a very slow process. At 12 knots, they jump up onto their foil, and these things go like the bat out of hell. You can't believe the speeds they're doing. The guys, the crews are sitting there, hard for you to see, but they've got on crash helmets, aeronautical type goggles, microphones. The noise these things make is extraordinary, from just their speed through the water, the vibrations they create. And this is the new boat, New Zealand, where I lived for 13 or 14 years. Wonderful, wonderful country. They won the cup from America some years ago, and in Bermuda, Larry Ellison from America he was the money behind the cup that challenged and held the cup. You don't want me to go into detail other than to tell you that how they won it was in the courtroom over a dispute with the Italians who had won it. Anyway, New Zealand won it, and this was their defence of it, and they designed and came up with a design for these boats. And honestly, they look like a praying mantis. They're the most extraordinary looking things. Mrs. Needham is outraged. They have nothing to offer the normal sailor. They don't even look like anything we can recognise. But the sailors who are doing this sort of sailing love it. A lot of the yachting classes, the Moths and others, are already foiling boats. They have a foil, and they get up on it. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing if you hadn't seen it before. I'm sure there are lots of videos around. Do have a look. This is New Zealand, and Luna Rossa, the Italian challenger, in a race at high speed, and they're doing 51 to 54 knots at times. That's 60 miles an hour. And you're sitting there in an open cockpit doing 60 miles an hour on water. I mean, it's an amazing thing to see. It's not anything that excites me, but I can tell you that the sailors who are involved with it, they love it. Speed thrills, and this is the thought that in 8 or 10 knots of breeze you can be doing 36, 38, 40 knots, like somewhere around 45, 50 miles an hour. And in any decent wind, you can be doing 60 miles an hour, up to 20 knots. Over 20 knots, they cancel the sailing because it's too rough for them. Any rough weather, any waves above half a meter, they cancel the race. It's too rough for them. So they're very, very specialised hybrid. I guess they're the F1 of sailing. They're not for everybody, but they are spectacular. And in the sailing world, things have certainly moved on. This was one of the challenges. This is Ineos Team UK at speed, and it just gives you another look at how these boats come right out of the water and they sit on the foil, and the other foil, the windward foil, becomes the balancing element. Quite extraordinary. These things are dangerous, folks. This is American magic. This was the New York Yacht Club's Challenger. And sometimes, if anything's just not quite right or the wind's a little bit too strong, this is American magic in a race where it was going around the top mark, and the wind gusted up to about 23, 24 knots, and they lost control of it. And look what happened. Over it went, had a big hole in the bottom from when it landed back in the water, and it was nearly lost. They had all sorts of drama getting flotation devices onto it and what have you, but everyone pitched in and they saved the boat. Unfortunately, the time they had before their next race, which couldn't be changed, was not enough for them to become really competitive. It would have been a shame, because it did look to be fast. It looked to be the only boat that was faster than Te Rehue. Probably haven't said that right. It's the Kiwi name for the New Zealand boat. But that's what happened to poor old Team New Zealand, and I hope they'll be back in the future. Okay, so a personal note, as I told you, I had an email from Mike, the Chicago dentist who did a Danielcode tutorial with me 10 or 12 years ago. And I want to just tell you that some of you know members of my family. Some of you have met my family. And this is about my daughter, Bodhi, who's all grown up now. And back in 2019, when she was 23, she finished her PhD. And in those 3 years she'd been doing her PhD thesis and dissertation, as it's called, she'd been lecturing at Bond University, and she was very, very good at it, very, very popular, won all sorts of awards for it. And I was really thrilled. I said, well, it's a wonderful life for you at university. Bond University is just it's a new university, or newish compared to the sandstone ones, but it's very, very lovely. It was beautiful. Here we are. Oh, Schlinky, here's the golf mate. I mean, yeah, she was a pup when I knew her. Cheers to a very smart young woman. Thank you, Jeff. She'll appreciate that. Anyway, I said, well, this is wonderful. Bond want to keep you as a lecturer. Wonderful thing to have a life in academia. You get good pay, wonderful working conditions. After a few years, you'll get tenure. That means you pretty well got a job for your life. Wonderful superannuation and retirement benefits. Just a really, really good life. And I said, so get your PhD finished, and you'll become a doctor, and then your pay will just about treble straight away at the uni. And she said, well, I finished it, but I haven't lodged the final version. I said, well, get on and do it. How long does it take? She said, oh, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. I've just got a couple of points to tidy up that my supervisors referred to. This was back 2 years ago. So I said, well, get it done. Anyway, the next thing we know, I was excited about that. I said, well, there's one of my children off my hands and well set up for her life. Well, she said, Dad, I'm not going to teach psychology at Bond. I said, well, what are you going to do? She said, I've decided I want to do medicine. I said, oh, God. And she said, I've applied to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, you would say, Americans. Notre Dame, we say in this part of the world. I've applied to Notre Dame medical school. I said, that's amazing. You've got a degree, a bachelor's in psychology with first-class honours, and a PhD if you get on and lodge the final document, and you're going to turn your back on it. Oh, well, I've always wanted to be a doctor. It's been my passion. I want to do it. Teaching doesn't give me enough hands-on fulfillment. So, believe it or not, off she went to Notre Dame last year in Sydney. So we didn't see her for a while because of the COVID outbreaks and the various states, including Queensland. Even though we had a very, very small, very low infection rate, the border was closed. So she couldn't get back from Sydney, and Mrs. Needham and I couldn't go down to Sydney and visit her, or we'd have to do 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel, not of your choosing, when you came back and crossed the border. So we didn't see her for a while, and then eventually we managed to get her home in December last year. And I said, have you got your PhD wrapped up yet? You had it a year ago at least. Yeah, oh, she said, I haven't, but I'll do it now. She said, I've got 3 weeks holiday, I'll knock it off, so I'll do so. Anyway, she got it lodged, and this is a part of the letter from Bond University saying you're now officially a PhD, a Doctor of Philosophy, and you have permission to call yourself Doctor. You're authorized by the university to now use the title Doctor, which is very, very prestigious. So I said, great, I'll go and get some business cards printed for you. Oh, she said, Dad, don't do that, please. I said, why? She said, I'm a year 2 medical student. She said, I'm not going to call myself Doctor. She said, that'll be a affront to everyone that I work with. So there you are, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. But I thought I'd just bring you up to date on those who know of some members of my family. Okay, so let's get moving with this question of navigation. So most of you will know that the easiest way to pinpoint any point on the surface of the Earth is with a combination of latitude and longitude. Latitude is the imaginary lines that go round the Earth. They start from 0 at the equator and go up to 90 at the North Pole, and they go down to 90 at the South Pole, and those lines are equidistant from each other, and the equator is 0. Longitude is the measurement east of west of the prime meridian, and they're again imaginary lines that create an angle at the center of the Earth, and they range from 0 at very close to the prime meridian, which is Greenwich, England, and they go from there. Well, what's interesting is that if you look at any of the literature, all of it has gone, talk about cancel culture, they've gone out of the way to make sure you never get a mention that the 0, the prime meridian at 0, is in Greenwich, England. And of course, England was the supreme maritime power back in those eras, long time ago, and that's really why they invented this whole thing of longitude, and it runs through the British Observatory at Greenwich, England. The thing about it is that latitude was a reasonably easy thing to discover. The Phoenicians, from as early as 600 BC, the Polynesians, as I've said, they used latitude from the stars, and they were the quadrant and the astrolabe. They've been used for years by astronomers to measure the inclination of the stars, and that was discovered very early historically. But knowing your latitude wasn't enough to determine your exact location. You needed to measure your line of longitude. In other words, it was easy enough to work out the latitude. They're the lines running east and, well, they're actually running on a parallel to the equator, and they move north and south. Longitude took many, many years more to develop. So they're the lines of latitude, and of course they're all the minor ones inside. They're just expressed in degrees, but they're actually expressed in degrees, minutes, and seconds, if you want to get into the detail of it. So early days, mariners knew latitude. And they had the part of the answer of navigating, and what they did traditionally is they'd sail to the point on the chart where they were at the latitude they wanted to be, but they had no mark for latitude. They couldn't calculate longitude, I should say. They couldn't calculate it. So they simply went to a spot that was they could prove was the correct latitude, and they sailed east or west, as the case may be, until they found land. So you could measure where you were in relation to changes in the location of celestial bodies, stars, sun and the moon, etc. And their height, relative position as they rose and said, it says here, was simple enough to observe. But of course, it wasn't that simple at sea, but eventually they found out how to do all of that. But finding longitude, and I've got a typo here, seafarers have been using longitude, that should be latitude, to measure their position since before at least 600 BC. Longitude, much harder to find, and that's because longitude, the division of longitude, are functions of time. And that's your, you need a clock to do it, and you need a very efficient clock. In fact, on the ocean, on a boat, you need a super efficient clock, because the early versions of them lost time or gained time rapidly when the boats tacked, going up or down the Thames usually. But in here we are, we're up to the 1730. The chronometer was developed by an Englishman, a Yorkshire carpenter, whose name was John Harrison, and he went on to build a number of these clocks, and they were more than groundbreaking. These were a whole world discovery of longitude, because once you could calculate longitude and you already knew how to calculate latitude, you could fix your position on the surface of the Earth anywhere with a very, very exact level of specificity. So finding longitude was the missing link for the whole pattern of global navigation. And these are what lines of longitude look like. The prime meridian run through Greenwich, England, which is the British observatory, who developed most of this stuff at the time. And of course, poor old Greenwich has been blanked off the map. It was extraordinary reading wiki about this, the history of finding longitude and why zero longitude, or the prime meridian as it's called, is at Greenwich. There is absolutely no mention of it at all. But the history of it is that there was a conference put together by the US President, President Chester A. Arthur, and he put together a number of delegates. They met in Washington, D.C., and they had the International Meridian Conference, and they selected the meridian passing through Greenwich as the official prime meridian. And it says here, due to its popularity, and that's because it had been in use for a while. However, France abstained from the vote, and French maps continued to use the Paris meridian for several decades. And that is just so typical of the French. They have been a pain in most people's you-know-what ever since, including now, when they have been instrumental in cancelling the shipments of 250,000 COVID vaccines to Australia. Well, when you talk about the European Union, you should really be talking about France and Germany. They were the prime movers in establishing the European Union, and the original purpose of it was called the European Steel Conference, and it was a tie-up between France and Germany, and the whole point of it was to harness and shackle Germany into Europe as it had conquered France and other parts of Europe twice in memory. And this was France's way of trying to protect itself against Germany on a long-term basis. And they've been difficult cutters since. And the whole history, the short version of this COVID vaccine, is there are two very special vaccines invented in the States. Pfizer's got one, the other one, the name escapes me for the moment, but they're both very difficult to transport. They have to be kept at super freeze levels, well outside the capacity of normal refrigerators, so they require storage in hospitals and places with this super freeze equipment, and it's very difficult to move around the country, and it's also very expensive. Pfizer are at about somewhere around $45 a dose. It might be a little bit more, a little bit less now, but that's what it was declared to be. In the meantime, in Britain, Oxford University hooked up with a manufacturer called AstraZeneca, which is a British public company, or that's run from Australia. Excuse me. And they came up with a totally different manufacturing method. And they came up with a vaccine that they were prepared to sell at cost, which at that stage was £2, or about a bit less than $4. So this vaccine from AstraZeneca was 10% of the cost of the other more sophisticated vaccines. And it did the job almost as well. There's been a bit of, playing with words. Pfizer and the other one came up with a 95% success on their test trials. AstraZeneca came out with 62%. But then there was the argument about it was different methodology, and the wording has now changed to say it will effectively prevent serious disease. So AstraZeneca has factories in Belgium, Switzerland, and in Britain. And of course, governments have grabbed the Pfizer one and the other one for themselves. Notice even in Australia, the politicians and senior public servants are all getting the Pfizer vaccine. The rest of us are getting the AstraZeneca one. And the other big appeal about the AstraZeneca one, apart from it being a fraction of the cost of the other vaccines, is that it can be stored in a normal refrigerator. So you can move it to different parts of the world where it's needed. What's happened is that these companies, AstraZeneca in particular, entered into arrangements and contracts with lots and lots of governments, one of which was Australia. And they followed the policy that they will fill each of the contracts in the order in which they were received. So if you got your order in early, you get the first whack of production, which is commercial normality, and you would think unobjectionable. Lo and behold, the French didn't like that. And two of the AstraZeneca factories are in Europe. The third one is in London, not in London, near London, England. And the new one, Australian government's had an even better idea. Let's set up a vaccine business in Australia using our existing tools. Let's upscale it so it can manufacture this vaccine under license, and we'll be able to have our own vaccine. In the meantime, Europe is being absolutely ravaged by the COVID virus, as has America. Australia, thankfully, and New Zealand have been essentially free of it now for many, many months. In fact, we had an initial lockdown back in March last year, and everyone stayed home for a couple of weeks, and that gave the government time to get the borders closed. It's easy for us, we're an island. And, of course, this is where all these infections are coming from, people coming in from overseas who picked it up, and they picked up various variants of it as well. So as soon as the government put in place a proper system to make all returning travellers quarantine for 14 days, deal with if they had it, deal with it in quarantine, that put the whole thing under control. Because if you're only dealing with instances of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of that magnitude, then contact tracing is very, very efficient. Once you get past those sorts of numbers, it becomes geometrical, it becomes exponential, and contact tracing becomes impossible. And that's what's happened essentially in the States and Europe and Britain. However, Paris, who delight in calling the Englishman perfidious Albion, it should be perfidious Gallic. They've stopped AstraZeneca's contractual shipments of their vaccine to Australia. They're a strange nation, they're an arrogant nation. And de Gaulle said, après moi la déluge. De Gaulle became president of France straight after the war, courtesy of the British, who thought he was a reasonable guy to deal with. That turned out not to be true. He was a typical arrogant Gaelic. And as he said, après moi la déluge, after me the end. Well, of course, none of that was true. He should have said après Napoleon the end. That was the last great warrior. And they've been a much conquered nation ever since. I hope that doesn't upset any Frenchmen, but if it does, it's just history. So anyway, let's move on. France has, together with the European Union, has stopped a bunch of COVID coming, which is why I haven't yet had a COVID vaccination, and nor have many. Actually, the elite got the Pfizer vaccination. The rest of us are waiting on the cheap version, but that'll be fine. This is just a angular presentation to show you how latitude and longitude are created. They're essentially angles at the center of the Earth. You don't need to know the details of that unless you're planning on sailing around the world with a sextant, and you don't want to use modern electrical equipment. But these days, all these things work off satellites and electronic things and what have you. So we've been talking about how latitude and longitude measure positions on the Earth, and trading charts actually measure in the same way. The x-axis is price, and we have many studies and indicators that suggest relative position. Stochastics, which we use, are a basic but adjustable measure. Stochastics are an old idea with a very clever solution, but essentially what they do is they tell you where the close of the market is today compared to X periods ago, whatever time cycle you set into your stochastic. So the y-axis is time, and again, the Danielcode has many measures. The problem with all studies and indicators of price is they are notoriously inexact. Gann said markets can stay overbought much longer than you can stay solvent, and that's true. And many of you have had your fingers burned with that idea. But the Danielcode price levels, which come from the Danielcode time ratios, believe it or not, provide that defining point where markets will turn accurate to less than 0.1%. Sometimes very much less than 0.1%. Back in 2014-15, when I was teaching tutorials from the 2014-2015 gold charts, gold was at about $1,100, and 0.1% of that gave you 1.1 points or 11 ticks, and that was the variant which we required the market to have when it sought out what we call target recognition. Markets will find these Danielcode numbers with a very, very high degree of specificity, and usually much less than 0.1%. Gold now is up in the 3,000s, so you would expect that the 1% variant mathematically is 3 points or 30 ticks, but in fact it's still trucking along at 11 ticks, less than 11, 12 ticks less than that. It's extraordinary, but that's simply an observation, isn't it? But it's an important one, and usually about this stage somebody jumps up, and despite the fact that we've been doing this for many of you for 13 years, they'll say, as someone said to me this week earlier, you only show the trades of the mega moves, the big moves, and what's Jim saying here? Thank you, Jim. Claimed AstraZeneca vaccine is causing blood clots. Well, yeah, there's always claims about everything, aren't they? In fact, don't get me started. I was going to start talking today about cancel culture and some of the stupidity that goes on in the world's media. I read 7 papers a day trying to keep abreast of everything, and in the process you get deluged with this social media, and she doesn't like him, he doesn't like her, they don't like, I mean, God, what's wrong with these people? Don't they have anything worthwhile to do with their time? Take up trading, be a good citizen, be productive. Anyway, yeah, thank you, Jim. Usually someone pops up, as someone did this week, and said, you only ever show us the example of the big super trades, was that an implied criticism? I guess it was. I've been doing this so long now, my hide's so thick, I usually just confine those sorts of comments to the rubbish bin. But the particular guy who made those comments, he's with us today, and he seemed to be a very reasonable guy and a very decent guy. So that's moved me to say, I'm going to show you Thursday's trading on every single one of our members' charts. Now, we publish 9 Forex pairs, the most popular 9, and 11 futures markets on the Danielcode website as members charts. They're updated 3 times a week. And of the other 15-odd markets that we cover, we're still doing the charts, but they're done in a different, much easier way. I was spending 70 hours a week or more just doing charts a few years ago, and it's unsustainable. So we publish those ones, the most popular ones, and there's 20 of those, and then we do maintain these charts for the other 15 or so markets that we cover, but don't actually publish the charts. We see them, I see them, we create the signals for them, and those signals are shown to you or highlighted for you in various TO3 and Plus programs and 6S, etc. But I want to go through this. I want to take the time. I know we haven't got much time. I'll be as brief as I can. These are all of the markets that are in the members chart. Have a look at what's made these markets turn. It's very simple. You can see it straight away. Let me just put my cursor back there and move myself to another computer. I'm not going to give you exhaustive chapter and verse with all of them. You can work it out for yourself, but have a look for this key reversal bar that we had today, Thursday. Where's the high? 7849. Where's the Danielcode red line? 7850. 1 tick variance. That's why it turned. Let's move on. Let's keep moving. Where are we? Down here. Here we are. Was that the next one, or did I jump one? I jumped one. CAD Chief. Look at this reversal. The bar 4 days ago was target recognition. This is delayed turn caused by that target recognition. Here's the next one. This is Euro JPY. Go back 1, 2, 3, 4 days. Perfect target recognition. I want to show you all the ways that you can get target recognition. This is Euro JPY, and that bar back on Friday closed at 130.333. Target recognition is valid at the bar, high, low, or the close. The Danielcode blue line was at 130.344, 11 ticks variance. Here's the next chart. Euro USD. Why do you think it started to turn today? There was the Danielcode black line, 19885. Here was on Wednesday. Where was the high? 19851. Where was the high today? 19889. Okay, 4 ticks variance against the Danielcode red line, which has been on your chart, members charts. You can all see it. Let's move on because this is going to take a little bit of time, and I do want you to see it. If I stay on one chart and stop trying to tell you where these markets turned, you'll see why. Same thing, GBP USD. Go back 1, 2, 3, 4 days. Target recognition at the red line. This is just a follow-up to it that's in the process of failing. New Zealand USD. Wednesday gave you target recognition at the red line. Dollar CAD. Look at this big, huge key reversal bar today. That was a blue line trade for us because yesterday and the day before that all had their lows at or close enough to the blue lines. Here's dollar Japanese yen. Why do you think this thing's turned today? 3 days ago was target recognition at the blue line. Look where the low came to do today, right at the red line support. Okay, this is crude oil. Look at this for a monster trade. We've been short crude oil in the 6S program for days. Massive run down. Look where it closed. The close of that bar. I'm going to shoot myself if I don't stop moving between computers. But I do want to show you that. This bar just charged down. Big drama. Look where it closed. The close is 60.06. The Danielcode black line is 60.04. Target recognition is valid at the bar, high, low, or the close. Variance, 2 ticks. That was about a $5,000 trade per one contract, folks. Pretty nice, huh? Okay. Here's the US dollar index. Why do you think it's closed today? It's been finding the red line for the last 4 days, more specifically, and particularly at Thursday of last week, where the close was 91,400. There's the red line, 91,395. That's 1 tick, folks. That's the difference. Okay, let's move up. Why do you think the S&P did this key reversal bar today? Almost exactly at the blue line. What was the variance there? The high today was 3978.50. Okay, look at the blue line, 3978.75. That blue line's been on this chart for weeks. You can all see it on the Danielcode members chart. That's why it turned. This is gold. Why did we get a down day today? Hit the Danielcode resistance at 1754.9. How accurate was that? Yesterday's high was 1750.6 against the red line at 1750.4. 2 ticks variance. Okay, out of a number like 1700. Extraordinary. Let's move on. Here's the DAX. You have a blue line sell signal going forward from this one. Have a look at it. The close today, 14,697. I know some of you trade the DAX. 14,697. There's the Danielcode red line, 14,684. 13 points difference in market this size. Extraordinary, isn't it? Here we are, copper. While we got a little snapback inside bar today, market found resistance at the red line. What about this fella? This is the Russell. We have been short this on success for days, and it gave us a bit of a thump today. We went long on the counter trend buy and then short again at the low. I'm showing you this one for a different reason. If the counter trend buy comes off Wednesday's bar, the failure point is Wednesday's low. So this buy trade actually got elected today, Thursday. The minute it hits that low, that's the failure point. You're wrong. You should be short. In other words, that leads to our rule that you always do a stop and reverse on an outside bar that occurs on the day of a new entry. Okay? That's why we do it. Keep going, or we're going to be very late. You can keep looking at this. Soybeans, look where it stopped today with a low was there. Why did it turn? Look at the high yesterday and the day before, right at that red line resistance. This is sugar. Look at sugar just diving down. Where did it stop? Almost exactly on its blue line. And this one is, here we are, the low today was 1581. Where's the Danielcode blue line? 1581, zero variance. Where did it close? And either one of these would be valid. The close is 1589. Where was the red line? 1589, zero variance. You can't make this stuff up, folks. These numbers have been on the charts for days, if not weeks. All the members see them all the time. This is the actual specificity or accuracy that you get from the Danielcode that you don't get anywhere else. This is the missing link, the Danielcode ratios. And believe it or not, these are actually ratios of time that we use for price, because time and price are the same thing on a different axis. Okay, this is silver, and we've only got one more, so we're not too far away. Here it is. This is T-bonds. Here we are, US T-bonds. Have a look what happened here. Yesterday, Wednesday, the close was 155 carat 07. That little arrowhead's a carat. 155.07. The blue line was at 155 carat 5. 2 ticks variance. That target recognition yesterday is still valid today. And in fact, blue line recognition lasts for 3 days, including the day of posting. Okay, keep going. Here we are. You want to be a super trader, do this stuff, create this stuff, let me know. Let me know your phone number, country of location if you want to have a talk on the phone. I don't want to wake you up in the middle of the night, or we can just chat by email. If you want to be able to do all these things and become a super trader, email me, jneedham@thedanielcode.com, jneedham@thedanielcode.com. You should be making a lot of money trading the Danielcode. Your tutorials, I teach you everything you see me do: trading time, trading price, forecasting. My fee is $7,500. If that's too much for you, bite a bit off it, and I'll give you terms on the rest. If you want to learn how to trade just price or time, not together, I'm happy to offer those separately for $4,500. Let's talk. It's your benefit to learn. It's a lifetime skill. Website Pro, please remember you're entitled, if you subscribe to Website Pro, you're entitled to 2 free 6S markets. Let Terry know, support of the Danielcode.com, and he will be happy to get that set up for you. And we say the business of trading, futures and Forex, is not to be right. The business of trading is making money. Okay, so we're nearly there, folks. This is, have a free trial, please, by all means. If you're new to Danielcode, go to the website, www.thedanielcode.com. Click on the free trial link. If you've already registered with it before, the program might have trouble giving you permission, in which case contact Terry at support@thedanielcode.com, and he will get that sorted for you. For everyone else, click on the free trial banner. You can have a 14-day free trial of everything we do, including the fourth seal forecasting. I haven't even had time to touch on that today, but you should have read, if you're interested in equities, and you've read the article Massacre of the Bulls 2021, where our fourth seal guru, Frank DB, has forecast a major correction this year in equities, and the fourth seal weekly commentaries are charting that as it goes along. Yes or no, it's a go, no-go proposition, and what's happened here is, I don't know, I'm probably using the wrong cursor. This is our disclaimer, folks. I do ask you to read this, please. I had a gentleman contact me last week saying he was long. He was short. He's I think he's a South African gentleman. He trades the DAX, and he was short the DAX when we had Danielcode buy signals all over the place, and it's cost him a lot of money. I promise you, it's really easy to lose money trading. I've done it. So is almost everyone else who ever started trading. Make sure you know how to trade before you spend real money trying to do it. You're better off spending the money to do a Danielcode tutorial and learn to trade. That way, at least you're equipped to go and face the markets. Okay, so what do we expect now on oil, Carlos? We have no foreknowledge, mate. Only God sees the river both ways. We only see the river backwards. We can only see what's happened up till today. But there'll be a reaction, a big move like that. There'll be some sort of a reaction. Okay, and Hank, don't get wet, mate. Have a good day. You got the water down there now. Apparently, Hunter Valley, it's just teeming down yesterday. I know. Okay, so that's us for the time being, folks. Thank you for being with us. Any questions, drop me an email, jneedham@thedanielcode.com. If there's anything in particular you'd like me to cover at our next webinar, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to do that. Do I think the June move will be a waterfall event, Stephen? Read the article. It's free. It's on our website. Click on the link that says articles, and it's the top one. And it's called Massacre of the Bulls. And you can read Frank DB was a student of mine, still is a student of mine. Came to a tutorial in Taupo, said he'd never ever seen a trading chart in his life, but he liked my writing, some articles I've had published, and he came to do a tutorial. It was the first year I taught the fourth seal, and he's grabbed it and gone on with it and made it his specialty. And he's very good, and he does that for us. Of course, he submits it to me for my view on MIG events, but time cycles tell you that the clock is ticking, and the clock doesn't go on ticking forever. So do have a look at that and enjoy it. Good. Jim, you enjoyed this one. Great. Frank was on top of it from the start. Jeff, I think you were there when he did his first tutorial. Lovely guy, brought his fiance with him there, and Jeff was at the same tutorial in Taupo. Boy, we had some fun, didn't we? Wonderful. And we're still alive, which is even better, isn't it? Well done, all. Okay, great to see you back with us. Under par, wonderful. Cheers, all the best, Murph. Thank you for being with us, folks. Let me know any question. Shoot me an email. Glad and happy to talk anytime. All the best. Bye-bye for now.